The world just shifted, and most people scrolling through their feeds have no idea what it actually means. Russia, a country that is supposed to be bleeding itself dry in Ukraine, just quietly moved advanced military hardware into Iranian hands. And before you dismiss this as just another geopolitical chess move with no real consequence to your life, let me tell you why that framing is completely wrong. What Moscow is doing right now is not random, it is not charity, it is a calculated, deliberate restructuring of the military balance in the most volatile corner of the planet, and it has everything to do with America's most expensive and most important new bomber, the B-21 Raider, a machine the United States Air Force is betting its entire long-range strike future on. On December 17, 2025, Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov announced that the 1st Regiment equipped with the S-500 Prometheus system had entered combat duty, Russia's most advanced air defense system ever built, capable of engaging targets in near space. And that alone would be big news, but what has followed since is even bigger. Iran agreed to a secret €500 million arms deal with Russia to acquire thousands of advanced, shoulder-fired missiles in a major effort to rebuild air defenses damaged during last year's war with Israel, and the weapons pipeline goes far beyond that. New details emerged about a contract to supply 48 Su-35 fighter jets to be delivered by Russia in 2026 through 2028, and in January 2026, Iran was also found to be in possession of up to 6 Russian Mi-28 attack helicopters, with Iranian pilots already appearing to master them in the skies over Tehran. This is not a minor transaction. This is Russia deliberately, systematically handing Iran an entirely new military architecture, while the United States is trying to project power from the same skies, with the B-21 Raider as the crown jewel of that projection. And if you think none of this connects, stay right here, because it absolutely does. Let's start from where things actually stand, because the mainstream narrative keeps skipping the parts that matter most. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched a joint military operation against Iran, and in the lead-up to that strike, the world got its first real look at just how deeply Moscow and Tehran had intertwined their military destinies. The Russian weapons pipeline into Iran had been running for years, quietly, methodically, in a way that most Western analysts were either underestimating or deliberately choosing not to highlight. Tehran had supplied Moscow with Shahed and Mohajer 6 drones, hundreds of short-range ballistic missiles, artillery ammunition, and a range of other military equipment that had been vital in sustaining Russia's campaign against Ukraine. This is the part that gets lost in translation when American cable news covers this story. The Russia-Iran relationship is not one-sided. It has been a deeply reciprocal, highly pragmatic exchange of military value. Iran gives Russia the tools to fight a grinding land war in Ukraine, and Russia gives Iran the tools to survive in an increasingly hostile regional environment. Now, what makes this moment particularly significant, and this is the part that ties directly into the B-21 question, is that the nature of Russian arms transfers to Iran has been quietly but unmistakably evolving. Western analysts generally view the S-500 Prometheus as Russia's effort to merge long-range air defense with elements of terminal ballistic missile defense in a mobile format, designed to engage aircraft, cruise missiles, ballistic missile warheads, and potentially certain targets operating in low Earth orbit, placing it at the upper end of Russia's layered air defense structure. Now, nobody is claiming that Russia has handed the S-500 itself directly to Iran. Not yet. But what Russia is doing is something arguably more dangerous in the long run. It is transferring the architecture of thinking, the doctrine, the hardware families, the radar systems, the integrated approach that forms the connective tissue of advanced air denial, and it is doing so at exactly the moment when the United States is depending more heavily than at any point in decades on a single platform's stealth advantage to project power. Think about what stealth actually means in a strategic context. It is not magic. It is not invisibility. Stealth works by defeating radar at specific frequencies and wavelengths, by reducing the thermal signature, by shaping the aircraft in ways that scatter detection pulses before they can bounce back coherently to a receiver. Every stealth aircraft has a detection threshold, a point at which a sufficiently advanced radar system operating at the right frequency with sufficient processing power can begin to develop a track. Russian military expert Mikhail Kodarenok has stated that the S-500 Prometheus is capable of intercepting hypersonic missiles, including those developed by Western nations, with characteristics comparable to Russia's Oreshnik medium-range ballistic missile, and the S-500 is built around exactly the kind of multispectral, multi-band radar architecture that closes the gap between what stealth aircraft were designed to evade and what modern detection systems can actually find. When Russia puts that technology into any operational theater, directly or by proxy, it changes the calculus for every American pilot, every mission planner, every general who thought they understood the risk envelope. Now layer on top of this what we know about the B-21. Defense expert Dr. Brent Eastwood has noted that the B-21 radar successfully connected with a KC-135R Stratotanker on March 10, 2026, and the program is on track for 2027 active duty. The Air Force is pushing Northrop Grumman hard. The U.S. Department of the Air Force is increasing B-21 radar production capacity by 25% using $4.5 billion authorized in fiscal year 2025 legislation, aiming to accelerate delivery of the next-generation stealth bomber. The machine is real, it is flying, and in a very meaningful strategic sense, the entire future of American long-range strike against China, against Russia, against Iran, against anyone who builds deep, layered, advanced air defenses, runs through the B-21. This is the one platform the Pentagon is counting on to penetrate the kind of integrated air defense systems that near-peer adversaries have been building for 2 decades, specifically to counter American air power. If you erode the B-21's stealth advantage, if you hand its potential adversaries the radar architecture, the detection doctrine, the multispectral sensor fusion needed to begin building a picture of where this aircraft actually is, then you have not just complicated one mission, you have undermined the foundational premise of American air dominance for the next 30 years. And this is exactly what makes Russia's behavior so consequential. Trump himself said that Russia might be helping Iran a bit, while Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi stated that Moscow's military cooperation with Tehran was good, seemingly confirming earlier media reports that Russia is providing Iran with satellite and intelligence data on the locations of US warships and aircraft. Read that again carefully. Satellite intelligence, targeting data, locations of US warships and aircraft. This is not just hardware, this is situational awareness being transferred in real time to a country that is actively engaged in hostilities with the United States. And if Russia is willing to share targeting data on US assets during active conflict, what else is being shared? What radar signatures? What detection parameters? What performance data gathered from watching American stealth aircraft operate? These are not hypothetical questions. They are the operational questions that every serious defense analyst should be asking right now. Let's also be honest about what the B-21 program's accelerated urgency actually tells us. The tactical success of Operation Epic Fury in 2026 has underscored a growing strategic vulnerability: the U.S. Air Force's reliance on an aging and undersized fleet of penetrating stealth bombers. The B-2 did its job over Iran. The B-2 Spirit bombers of the U.S. Air Force's 509th Bomb Wing delivered a devastating blow to Iran's uranium enrichment program, a shock so serious it caused Iran to agree to a ceasefire in less than 48 hours. But that operation exposed something uncomfortable. Marshalling 7 B-2s for the strike on Iran was impressive, but work had to begin months in advance, and not all of the 19 B-2s can be used in a mission on the same day, with some unavailable due to scheduled maintenance and nuclear triad commitments. America flew its most powerful stealth bombers halfway around the world, and what it found was that the shelf is almost empty, the inventory is too thin, the platform is too few, and the B-21 is supposed to fix all of that, but fixing it requires time during which Russia is actively working to hand potential adversaries the tools to defeat it. Here is where the geopolitical architecture becomes even more important to understand, because the transfer of weapons from Russia to Iran is not happening in a vacuum. Russia's immediate stake in the conflict is straightforward. Any war that preoccupies the United States, depletes Western munitions stockpiles, divides alliance attention, and forces Washington to prioritize the Middle East over Ukraine serves Moscow's purposes. Every Patriot interceptor expended over the Gulf is one unavailable for transfer to Kyiv. Every week Washington is consumed by the Middle East is a week it is not pressing Moscow on Ukraine. This is the framework that most American commentators are missing entirely. They are covering the Iran story as if it is a standalone crisis, as if the weapons Russia is shipping to Tehran are simply Russia trying to be a good partner to an ally. But that is not what is happening. What is happening is that Moscow is prosecuting a multi-front strategic campaign designed to exhaust American resources, attention, and political will. And arming Iran is a central pillar of that campaign. The Verba deal, the Mi-28 deliveries, the Su-35 contract, the intelligence sharing, these are not separate events. If the Iranian regime manages to survive the current conflict, it could be more reliant than ever on Moscow, with Russia potentially gaining significant political influence in Iran in exchange for supplies of weapons and humanitarian aid. Russia is not just helping Iran fight, Russia is positioning itself to own Iran's strategic future, and an Iran that is more deeply integrated into Russia's military-industrial ecosystem is an Iran that will, over time, become a testing ground for Russian anti-stealth doctrine. Every American aircraft that operates over Iranian airspace, every signature that Russian sensors, whether satellite-based or shared with Iranian ground stations, can capture feeds back into the intelligence mosaic that Russia is assembling about how American stealth platforms actually perform in contested environments. Now, some analysts will point out, and they are not wrong to do so, that the specific hardware in the current Russia-Iran transfer is limited in what it can actually accomplish against the B-21. The American B-2 bombers that struck nuclear facilities flew at altitudes beyond the reach of even more advanced missile defense systems. The Verba is a man-portable, shoulder-fired system. It targets low-altitude aircraft. You are not shooting down a B-21 with a Verba. That much is true. But this analysis, while technically accurate, misses the forest entirely by focusing on a single tree. The question is not whether the Verba can bring down a B-21 today. The question is what the transfer of Russian military architecture to Iran, layered over time, augmented by intelligence sharing, deepened by the kind of strategic partnership that was specifically designed to deliver technology transfer in sanctioned categories, diplomatic cover in multilateral forums, and operational learning from shared adversaries, what that entire ecosystem produces 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that is the horizon that matters. And this is where the S-500 question becomes genuinely alarming in a way that most people are not discussing. The S-500 has entered Russian combat service. Russia's newest strategic shield is still facing questions about bridging the gap between propaganda and battlefield reality. Nobody is disputing that. But the S-500 is not static. It is a platform that will be continuously upgraded, continuously improved, continuously fed with operational data from every interaction it has with Western aircraft, cruise missiles, and drone signatures. And as Russia deepens its intelligence-sharing relationship with Iran, the data flow moves both ways. Iran's air defense operators, however outmatched today, are gaining experience, gaining data, gaining a picture of how American stealth performs under real combat conditions. That knowledge does not disappear when the shooting stops. Iran purchased the S-300 system from Russia for huge sums of money and campaigned for its delivery for nearly a decade, believing that it would protect its nuclear program from Israel. However, Israel destroyed all 5 S-300s in Iran, wiping out years of investment and the entire premise of Iran's air defense strategy in a matter of hours. Tehran learned from that. What Iran is now seeking from Russia is not just hardware. It is a fundamentally different approach to air defense, one that is dispersed, mobile, non-radar dependent for its lowest tier, and nested within a broader architecture of layered Russian doctrine systems. The Verba is part of that dispersed layer. The Mi-28 attack helicopters are force protection. The Su-35s, if that contract completes, are a credible air-to-air deterrent that would dramatically complicate any future air campaign over Iranian territory. And all of it is built on a Russian doctrinal foundation that is specifically optimized to challenge the assumptions American air planners have been making for 30 years. The B-21 is America's answer to that challenge. It is the platform designed from the ground up to operate inside the threat envelope that systems like the S-500 represent. The Air Force describes it as a dual-capable penetrating strike stealth bomber able to deliver both conventional and nuclear munitions, forming the backbone of a future bomber force. And U.S. Secretary of the Air Force Troy Menck has defined the strategic importance of the bomber as foundational, stating that the B-21 is foundational to America's long-range strike capability and to credible deterrence. That word, foundational, is doing enormous work in that sentence. It means that without the B-21, the United States does not have a credible answer to the kinds of integrated air defense systems that Russia builds, sells, shares doctrine on, and increasingly deploys by proxy. The entire forward edge of American military power over the coming decades rests on this one program succeeding and delivering on its stealth promise. And Russia knows this. That is not paranoia. That is just a clear-eyed reading of what Moscow's behavior is telling us. Iran is a key node in the alignment of Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea that defines the strategic environment of the current decade. Any serious effort to contest Russian revisionism must reckon with Iran's role in sustaining it, as a sanctions-busting partner, a supplier of drones and ballistic missiles to Russia's war in Ukraine, and a spoiler capable of driving energy crises and regional instability to Moscow's advantage. When Russia arms Iran, it is not just helping a friend, it is building a forward deployment of Russian strategic doctrine in one of the most contested airspaces on Earth, a space where American stealth aircraft are already operating, already being observed, and already generating the kind of real-world performance data that no laboratory test can replicate. The deepest truth here is one that Washington's defense establishment has been reluctant to state plainly. The competition between American stealth technology and Russian detection technology is not a static duel. It is a dynamic, co-evolutionary contest, and every time a Russian radar system, or a system built on Russian doctrine, gets to observe an American stealth platform operating in a real combat environment, Russia learns something. Every sortie is data, every signature is information, and the Russia-Iran arms pipeline is, among other things, a mechanism for Russia to position sensors and doctrine close enough to American operational patterns to continue gathering that information at scale under real conditions in real time. That is the dimension of this story that goes almost entirely unreported, and it is the dimension that matters most for the long-term question of whether the B-21 can actually do what the Air Force needs it to do when the stakes are highest. The world is not standing still while America builds its next bomber. Russia is not waiting politely for the B-21 to reach full operational capability before deciding whether to challenge it. Moscow is working the problem right now through every proxy, every arms deal, every intelligence sharing arrangement, every whisper of targeting data passed to an Iranian radar operator. And the United States needs to reckon with that reality clearly, not through the comfortable lens of the last 30 years, but through the much sharper, much more honest lens of a world that has already changed.